Hello everyone, this is Tim. This is part 2 of my Vampire the Masquerade review. I kind of got cut off at the end of the last one, but I don't know, I think you pretty much got everything that was in there. I want to talk a little bit about the prince of the city, and he pretty much kind of has rules of everything and makes sure he holds to the traditions of the Masquerade and of the Camarilla. He's usually the elder vampire, rules the city and domain, sometimes the suburbs. But he basically keeps orders. He basically tries to keep the anarchs in line because they usually kind of fight against the rules, and they really don't like that whole hierarchy thing. Not all cities have princes. Some are councils. Some are not ruled at all, especially if there's a low number of vampires. Prince is an overseer, an arbiter of disputes. What else does he do here? When the rule of a prince is questioned or thwarted, the prince must use force to maintain control. And this happens a lot when people are kind of pushing against the rules or breaking the masquerade. If he doesn't have enough power, his rule ends. Prince is normally the eldest, but not always. Some of the elder vampires don't wish to really partake in vampire society anymore, and they kind of leave it. Challengers for rule must be vanquished or forced to give in. Prince is powerful because he's allowed to create progeny, and he basically dictates when other vampires can create progeny or create new vampires, because that normally isn't allowed. So he's powerful because he could make as many new vampires as he wants, and they're gonna, watch his back. Probably, because sometimes that doesn't always work. But that's why they're usually pretty strong. And the prince also has the elders, which help to protect him and do kind of be sort of a council and give advice, and they support his reign. Some of the advantages of princedom, like I said, the right to progeny, protection of the elders, political power in the Camarilla itself, mastery over those that enter his domain or his city, and newcomers must basically report to him and say that why they're there, and he has the right to refuse them. Freedom to feed, and he can actually tell vampires when to feed and when not to feed. Power over one's enemies. You can't kill Prince at will. But if the traditions are the prince can't kill vampires at will. There has to be some sort of reasoning behind it. And it's normally when they break the traditions of the masquerade. And the traditions are basically the laws of most cities, and the prince is the enforcer. And the anarchs don't usually like these traditions, and they usually fight against them. The Primogen, if I pronounce that right, is basically this council of elders that support and help govern with the prince. They support him. There is his advisors. Without their support, like if they don't like a prince, his power is a lot weaker, and then other wannabe princes can come in and perhaps take over. So again, you can do a lot of these interesting political things with the vampire game, and you have different power groups, different power centers, and they can interact with each other and try to do political battle, a lot of backstabbing. You can have a lot of fun with that if that's your sort of game. And I'm not usually that good with political games, but I had a good time with doing that in Vampire. There's a thing called Elysium, which is certain buildings or locations are free from violence, and the elders spend most of their time there because it's more safe. They're normally fine arts buildings or basically anything that's beautiful, like architecture. It's like neutral ground, no violence, no destruction. You have to be discreet. It kind of reminded me of the Immortals and in Highlander, where they had the holy ground site where they wouldn't fight there. So that's kind of what Elysium is. The 6 traditions of the Masquerade are normally recited to progeny by their sires, and then progeny to the prince, just to make sure that everybody knows the rules. Number 1 is the Masquerade. Don't let humans know that vampires exist. Don't tell them. Don't show them. 2 is the domain. Respect the domain and city of the prince. 3 is the progeny. Only a prince can create progeny freely, and he can give that right to others, and they must ask. 4, the accounting. Sire is responsible for any vampires they make, their progeny. 5 is hospitality. Honor others' domains. When you go there, present yourself before the prince. You are nothing until you do this. So don't expect to be treated fairly if you haven't done this yet. And destruction. You can't destroy other kindred. Only the prince can call the blood hunt. And again, they have to have some sort of reasoning why they do this. In some cities, the Primogen have a small domain themselves, especially in larger cities. Vampires are expected to share details of strange exploits that happen in the city and share it to the prince. And vampires have no rights when a sire is in direct care of them at a young age. So you kind of have to work your way into things. All right, I'll show you some more videos, some more artwork. Okay, another responsibility of the sire is to introduce their progeny to the prince. The prince has a right to refuse to let a vampire enter their city, as I talked about. The prince tends to also question newcomers to find out what's going on in the wider world of vampire politics and real-world events. Some claim only a sire can kill his progeny or bloodline, but princes have claimed that right. So that could be something you might want to throw in a campaign. Maybe there's some dispute as far as the traditions go. Vampires who break rules are usually slain, and that's called the blood hunt or lex talionis. I'm probably butchering that word. Normally, this blood hunt is only called over a breach of the 6 traditions. Sometimes a rule breaker is maimed or exiled from the city. And I talked about some of the sects of vampire society, and that's SECTS. The Camarilla is the largest, and the Sabbat combats it and contends with it. The Incanu are a secretive and claim not to be a sect. And those are normally Methuselahs and older vampires who don't really want to take part in vampire politics anymore. The Camarilla assumes all vampires are members of their sect. Conclaves are great meetings of the Camarilla, especially those in higher power. They interpret the 6 traditions, and they may institute new ones. They call blood hunts even against princes. There's an inner circle of the Camarilla. Every 13 years, the elders of each clan meet. It's basically the true center, the true hub of that organization. They meet in Venice, Italy. Pretty much, they've been doing it for about 500 years. Justicars are the judges of the sect, appointed by the inner circle, and they enforce the 6 traditions, sometimes harshly. They have broods, also called coteries. Again, that's the word for like the party of adventurers. And those aid them. The Sabbat is also called the Black Hand, like I talked about. They are supposedly evolved from a medieval death cult. They are aggressive. They rule through fear, hatred, anger, and violence. In North America, they have control of Detroit, Toronto, Montreal, New York, Philly, Pittsburgh, Portland, and they are organized in packs. And that's kind of a derogatory term in the Camarilla, because there's a lot of that going on. La Sombra and Tamishis, probably butchered that too. Clans pretty much dominate the Sabbat. They find the Camarilla contemptible because they try to hold on to their humanity. This is a blasphemy to them. And again, this book doesn't really go into a lot of the details of the Sabbat. That's more in the revised edition. So if you want to play a Sabbat game, I would recommend getting revised, because they really don't stat up or give you their weaknesses and strengths in this book. The Incanu, they distance themselves because they are old and powerful. They tend to live in the wild and sleep in the earth. Somehow they live near the shape changers, the werewolves, and don't die. Many are 4th and 5th generations, and their sect is mysterious. They punish those in their order that continue to meddle in the jihad and political vampire, society. This is their only law, is basically to stay away. They are a sizable minority of these the Kanu have reached the balanced state of Golconda, where they balance their humanity and the beast. Some vampires know their lineage, but these days most do not. It's kind of, back in the day you knew who your sire's sire was, and these days sometimes you don't even know, who was the sire before yours. It's kind of fallen out of, I don't know. They just don't do it anymore, or at least as much as they used to. And in second edition, there's the bloodlines and clans. They mainly discuss the major clans, and some of them were also put out in splat books. I think the revised edition goes into more detail. But I'm going to go into the clans in the next segment. First clan I'm going to talk about is the Brujah. They are scorned as riffraff who have lost their heritage. They have always been rebels, and they have always tested the traditions. They're one of the few clans that really support the anarchs. They respect no authority, acknowledge no leaders. This rabble basically considers themselves to be free. And each of the different clans has a whole 2-page spread on basically what they're about and what they want to do, whatever their weaknesses and strengths. Brujah's clan disciplines, these are kind of like the magical powers in quotes that are because of their blood. They have celerity, potence, and presence. It gives you suggestions for backgrounds and character creations, what they normally have, but you don't have to follow those. The weaknesses of the Brujah. The members of this clan fall into frenzies far more readily than other vampires. The difficulty for frenzy rolls is always 2 higher than the number listed. And Brujah are fun to play. I don't know. I have had a good time playing Brujah in the past. Okay, the next clan is the Gangrel. They are known as loners and rustics. The outlanders are the only kindred who dare venture outside of the cities. Their founder supposedly is said to still take care of them, and the gypsies as well, who are supposedly her mortal descendants. And for the Gangrel, they pretty much are just kind of they're pretty wild. They have animalistic qualities to them. Their clan disciplines are animalism, fortitude, and protean. And again, there's lots of fluff for what they are and how you should roleplay them. But again, you don't have to do that depending on what your character concept is. Their weaknesses. Gangrel become increasingly animal-like each time they frenzy. The player of a Gangrel character must pick a new animal feature each and every time the character does so. So that's kind of cool. You just basically look more bestial in nature. For every 5 animal features gained, the player must lower one of the character's social attributes by 1. So you just basically become more animalistic as time goes on. And I had a game where I played vampires and werewolves actually in the same group, and the Gangrel was kind of the go-between between them to try to keep level heads and try to make sure they didn't destroy each other like they wanted to at every step. The next clan is the Malkavians. They are commonly and correctly believed to be insane. The kooks nonetheless possess an uncanny vision and wisdom. The founder is supposedly cursed, or was supposedly cursed by Cain, and they live with madness in their blood. Normally they exist on the fringes of society. And the Malkavian source book is really fun to check out if you haven't yet. And basically the fluff text just goes through and just says, they're really crazy, they do kind of nuts things like to play practical jokes, etc., etc. Their clan disciplines are auspics, dominate, and obfuscate. I always had a hard time saying that. And their weakness, all members of this clan have some sort of derangement. In fact, characters begin the game with one. The character may choose any derangement they want in Chapter 8, but the character will never be able to completely overcome it, no matter how much willpower is spent, because you can't spend willpower to get rid of derangements in this game. Okay, that will be the end of this video, and I will work on the next one.